The story starts with what could have been the biggest power move in WNBA history, a $325 million offer from Boston Celtics minority owner Steve Pagliuca to buy the Connecticut Sun and move them to Boston. On paper, this wasn't just a sale. This was a revolution, a seismic shift in the league's future. And at the heart of the buzz, the hype, and the headlines was Caitlin Clark, the league's crown jewel, the player whose rise has redefined women's basketball in less than a year. If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe. For context, the Connecticut Sun are one of the league's most consistent franchises on the court, but off the court, they've never had the media pull or financial dominance of bigger market teams. Boston, on the other hand, is a sports city through and through. It's home to some of the most loyal, passionate, and deep-pocketed fans in the country. You put a WNBA team there, add the star power of Clark visiting multiple times a year, and you've got an instant sellout culture. That's not just good for Boston. That's good for the league. Pagliuca's group knew this, which is why they didn't stop at just a $325 million purchase price, a number that was shattered every record for a women's sports franchise sale. They went further, promising an extra $100 million for a state-of-the-art practice facility. We're talking NBA-level resources, locker rooms built for champions, training equipment that rivals the best in the world, and a market where sports coverage is as natural as breathing. It was, in every sense of the word, an upgrade, and the proof was already there. When the Sun played at Boston's TD Garden, even without Caitlin Clark in the building, the game sold out. The atmosphere was electric. Broadcasters loved it. Players loved it. Fans were already begging for a permanent team. Now imagine those sellouts with Clark on the floor, dropping threes from the logo while Boston fans lose their minds. That's not just basketball, that's an event. So why didn't it happen? According to the WNBA, it came down to procedural rules. Boston hadn't applied for a team during the league's last expansion window. The relocation, they said, didn't fit within the structure of how the league approves such moves. In other words, the paperwork wasn't filed at the right time, in the right way. To many fans and even players, that explanation felt like a bad joke. Here was a $325 million offer, backed by an owner with proven success in one of the biggest sports markets in the world, willing to inject another $100 million into the league. And the WNBA's answer was essentially, sorry, wrong form. It wasn't just the money that made this sting. It was the timing. The league is riding an unprecedented wave of attention, thanks in large part to Clark. Her games are smashing viewership records, selling out arenas, and driving merchandise numbers through the roof. Investors who wouldn't have touched women's basketball 5 years ago are now lining up with open checkbooks. Opportunities like this don't wait around forever. Clark herself hasn't been one to publicly bash the league. She's careful about her words. But behind closed doors, you can imagine the frustration. She's putting her body on the line night after night. She's the face of the league's current boom, and yet decisions like this feel like the league is playing not to lose instead of playing to win. From the player's perspective, Boston wasn't just another city. It was a chance to raise the bar for facilities, salaries, travel, and fan engagement across the league. If one team raises its standards at high, other teams have to follow. That's how you grow an entire sport, by making it impossible to go back to the old way of doing things. Instead, the WNBA seems to be signaling that bureaucracy comes first, growth comes second. Fans weren't shy about voicing their anger. Social media exploded with comments from people in Boston, Connecticut, and across the league. Boston fans were furious about losing the chance at a hometown team. Connecticut fans were split. Some want to keep their franchise, while others admitted the move could have been better for the league overall. What united both sides was disbelief that the league would turn away this much money and this much momentum over procedural red tape. Pagliuca's offer also exposed a deeper issue. The WNBA's expansion and relocation strategy is painfully slow compared to the speed of its current growth. The league is talking about adding cities like Cleveland, Detroit, and Philadelphia, which would be great in the long term. But Boston already has proven demand, an NBA-ready arena, and a billionaire investor ready to go. Most leagues would jump at that. The WNBA stalled. Here's where Caitlin Clark's name really comes into play. She's not just a player, she's an economic engine. When she plays, ticket prices spike, arena concessions sell out, TV ratings soar. Having her in a major media market like Boston, even just a few times a year, could have been a PR and revenue jackpot for the league. Instead, the decision feels like a missed shot in the fourth quarter of a playoff game. The other frustrating part? Moves like this don't just affect one team or one city. They shape the perception of the entire league. The WNBA has been fighting for decades to be taken seriously by sports media and the public. Right now, they've got momentum, investment interest, and cultural relevance. Turning away a record-setting deal, without even entertaining creative ways to make it work, sends a wrong message to fans, to sponsors, and to future investors. And this isn't just about Boston or Connecticut. This is about the league showing that it's willing to adapt to the opportunities the moment presents. Men's leagues adapt constantly. Relocation deals, emergency expansions, rule tweaks, all to capitalize on momentum. The WNBA can't afford to act like it has decades to figure this out. The truly wild part is that even some players from teams not involved in the deal spoke up. Quietly, of course, because no one wants to get fined, but the sentiment was clear. This kind of offer could have raised a standard for everyone. Better facilities for one team could force the rest to upgrade. More media coverage in a sports city like Boston could increase visibility for every player. And that $325 million price tag, that sets a new market value for franchises, meaning every team in the league instantly becomes more valuable. Instead, we're back to business as usual, and that's the problem. For Clark, this whole situation is symbolic. She's been pushing the limits on the court, breaking barriers in viewership and popularity, but the league's decision-making still feels stuck in a slower, smaller era. When she talks about wanting women's basketball to be treated like a major sport, this is exactly the kind of moment she means. In the end, this wasn't just a rejection of a business deal. It was a rejection of a vision of the WNBA as a league ready to play in the big leagues, to make bold moves, to take risks in pursuit of growth. Instead, it feels like the league is afraid to color outside the lines, even when those lines are holding it back. If history is any guide, opportunities like this don't circle back twice. Boston was ready. Pagliuca was ready. The fans were ready. And most importantly, the league's brightest star was standing right there in the middle of it, already proving she could deliver. The fallout from the WNBA's decision to block the $325 million Boston move didn't just end with a few angry tweets and disappointed season ticket holders. It's already creating ripple effects that could shape the next 5 years of the league. For starters, this was more than just a relocation proposal. It was a litmus test for whether the league's leadership is truly ready to embrace the reality that women's basketball has entered a new era, an era where billion-dollar conversations aren't just aspirational, they're possible. The price tag alone was a message. Investors are now willing to put serious money into the sport. That's not a vague, maybe someday hope. That's a here and now opportunity. But by turning it down, the WNBA inadvertently sent another message. We're not ready to move that fast. And that hesitation is dangerous, because momentum is one of the hardest things to build in sports, and one of the easiest things to lose. From a player's point of view, it's baffling. Caitlin Clark has been living proof that the league can be a mainstream attraction. Every city she visits sells out. Even teams that have historically struggled to fill the lower bowl suddenly have full arenas. Her merch numbers rival established NBA stars. Sponsors see her as a walking brand, someone who can not only sell a jersey but sell an entire league. Now imagine coupling that with a city like Boston. We're talking one of the richest sports ecosystems in the country. Fans who buy season tickets for the experience of being part of a winning culture, not just to watch a single star. When the Sun played games there, even without Clark, the crowd looked like an NBA playoff atmosphere. The roar, the energy, the sheer density of media coverage. It was already in place. All the WNBA had to do was say yes. Players like Sophie Cunningham and Lexi Hull, who've been vocal about wanting better infrastructure for athletes, would have looked at Boston's planned $100 million practice facility as the blueprint for future. Dedicated recovery rooms, top-tier strength equipment, private travel lounges. It would have set a standard. When one team raises the bar that high, other owners have to follow or risk being seen as second-rate. That's how progress works. Instead, the league chose procedure over possibility. And while the official reasoning sounds neat, rules are rules. Sports history is littered with examples of leagues making exceptions when the upside is too big to ignore. The NFL has bent relocation rules for expansion markets. The NBA has approved ownership changes under special circumstances. Even global soccer leagues have fast-tracked new franchises to capitalize on fan demand. The difference is those leagues understand that windows of opportunity are finite. What's worse is the optics. Sponsors and corporate partners were watching this play out. Many of them see Boston not just as a market, but as a statement. If the WNBA had made the move, they could have pitched it as a bold, future-focused leap. Instead, the story now is about hesitation and bureaucracy, not exactly the energy you want when courting new investment. Caitlin Clark, whether she wanted to be or not, has become a central figure in this conversation. Her name alone changes the stakes of a city's basketball market. When she plays, the cameras show up, the media covers every angle, and the ticket prices climb. The league knows this. Investors know this. And yet, it feels like the decision-makers didn't fully factor her impact into the equation. For Boston fans, the disappointment has a bitter edge. They've proven they'll show up, even for a team that isn't theirs yet. They filled the TD Garden for what was essentially a road game. They've been vocal about wanting the WNBA to join their city's sports lineup, and they had an ownership group with the money and connections to make it happen instantly. Instead, they're being told to wait their turn, with no guarantee their turn will ever come. The Suns' current fan base is understandably defensive. Connecticut has been a loyal market for years, and losing a franchise would hurt. But even some Sun fans admitted the Boston move could have elevated the entire league. The truth is, big markets with high-profile investors tend to lift the value of every franchise, not just their own. If Boston could pull in larger TV contracts, national sponsors, and international exposure, that rising tide would benefit the whole league's revenue pool, including Connecticut's, if they'd been relocated strategically instead of outright removed. And then there's a competitive angle. Moving a team to Boston would instantly create new rivalries. Imagine a Boston versus New York Liberty matchup packed into TD Garden, or Boston hosting Caitlin Clark's Fever in a playoff series. Rivalries fuel sports culture. They drive storylines, boost ticket sales, and get casual fans emotionally invested. Right now, the WNBA has a few of those rivalries brewing, but adding Boston would have turned the intensity up to 11. Instead, we're left with what feels like a missed chance. Some players have hinted, carefully, that these kinds of decisions are part of why the league struggles to retain top talent long-term. If the infrastructure, salaries, and growth opportunities aren't keeping pace with the athletes' ambitions, it opens a door for stars to take their talents elsewhere, whether that's overseas leagues or alternative ventures. That's not a threat anyone wants to say out loud, but it's in the air. The situation also exposes a bigger tension, the push and pull between tradition and innovation. The WNBA has long prided itself on stability and cautious growth, but Clark's arrival has accelerated the sport's visibility in a way that demands quicker, bolder moves. The question is whether leadership can adapt to that speed, or whether the moment will pass them by. Even from a branding perspective, Boston would have been gold, a city steeped in championship culture, instantly marketable jerseys, crossover opportunities with the Celtics, and a built-in national TV audience. The fact that Pagliuca, someone already embedded in the NBA world, was willing to cross over into the WNBA with such a large financial commitment should have been seen as a green light. It's not every day that a proven sport executive with billions in resources comes knocking. And yet, here we are. If the WNBA hopes to keep attracting offers like this, it's going to have to do some soul-searching. Investors aren't going to line up forever if they feel their money and ideas will get tied up in red tape. Fans won't keep buying in if they believe the league is leaving opportunities on the table. And players, especially the ones driving the current boom, won't sit quietly if they think leadership isn't matching their ambition. That's why this decision is bigger than one team, one city, or one owner. It's about whether the league is ready to treat itself like the major professional sports entity it's becoming. Because right now, Thanks to Caitlin Clark and the wave of attention she's brought, the WNBA isn't just knocking on the door of mainstream relevance. It's already inside. The question is whether the people in charge are willing to act like they belong there. The Boston deal could have been a statement. Instead, it's a warning. If the league doesn't start thinking bigger and moving faster, someone else will. And when they do, the WNBA might find itself watching from the sidelines, wondering how they let their best chance slip away. For Clark, the frustration is layered. She's not the one signing checks or making relocation decisions, but her name is inseparably tied to the league's business right now. Whether she likes it or not, her presence is influencing ticket sales, media deals, and even where billionaires want to plant teams. When you've got the kind of gravitational pull she has, every missed opportunity feels personal. Because everyone's looking at you as the reason those opportunities exist in the first place. And make no mistake, Boston wasn't just chasing the Connecticut Sun. They were chasing the Caitlin Clark era. Investors like Steve Pagliuca don't throw $325 million into a pot, plus an extra $100 million for facilities, unless they see the market surging into new territory. Caitlin's arrival proved there's an audience hungry for women's basketball on a grand scale in Boston, a city that thrives on sports identity. Wanted in on that wave immediately. Imagine it. Clark coming into TD Garden for her first game against a newly minted Boston franchise. The banners overhead, the crowd already buzzing with NBA-level energy. That's the kind of spectacle that moves the needle for national broadcasters. That's the kind of matchup that gets casual fans, the ones who don't yet follow the WNBA religiously, to stop scrolling and start watching. Now that vision is gone, at least now, and the league has to sell a much duller story. Boston might get a team someday if it fits into our timetable. That's not going to make highlight reels. Here's where it gets more complicated. Players like Sophie Cunningham and Lexi Hall have been publicly pushing for better resources, player health investment, and upgraded travel standards. Boston's proposal checked all those boxes in one swoop. Their $100 million facility wasn't just about shiny weight rooms. It was about setting a precedent for what WNBA athletes should expect from their workplaces. Imagine private charter travel becoming standard because one team normalized it. Imagine medical and recovery centers so advanced that player injuries dropped league-wide. Boston could have been the flagship for all of that. Instead, by sticking to procedure, the league effectively told every player in the WNBA, yes, we want progress, but only when it fits neatly into our schedule, even if the money and momentum are here right now. From a PR perspective, that's risky. Fans aren't patient in the social media era. Momentum doesn't sit quietly on the shelf until you're ready for it. It either grows or it dies. And this particular wave of WNBA momentum is tied almost entirely to Clark's current career window. She's in her early years, healthy when not overworked, and at the height of her marketability. You build around that now, not in 3 years when the spotlight has inevitably shifted to the next big name. There's also a silent economic truth here. By rejecting Boston, the WNBA left a record-setting valuation on the table. That $325 million price tag wouldn't just have been a headline. It would have set a new benchmark for franchise worth. Once a number like that is in the books, every other franchise's value rises. That helps with everything from negotiating TV rights to attracting new investors. Even if some of the league offices were worried about uprooting the Sun from Connecticut, there's no denying the upside of having a historic sale to brag about. And then there's Boston itself, a city that knows how to sell sports culture. The Celtics, Bruins, Red Sox, and Patriots all have decades of fan loyalty baked in. But what makes Boston unique is its ability to adopt and fiercely defend new sports identities. The MLS Revolution have a devoted base. Women's sports in Boston already draw impressive numbers in lacrosse, hockey, and soccer. Adding a WNBA team into that mix wouldn't have been an uphill battle. It would have been plugging into a machine that's already running full speed. By rejecting Boston, the WNBA not only missed a market opportunity, but also a cultural one. They could have redefined the image of the league as one that actively seeks out powerhouse markets ready to amplify women's sports. Instead, they reinforce the image of being cautious to a fault. This is where Clark's personal brand gets tangled in the politics. She doesn't have to say a single word publicly, But everyone knows what Boston would have meant for her legacy. Her matchups, there would have been appointment viewing. Her off-court sponsorship deals in that market could have expanded beyond sports into tech, finance, and fashion. It's not exaggerating to say Boston could have been the stage where her career reached a new commercial tier. Veteran players are watching this, too. Some are thinking about what this decision says for their own futures. If the league is slow to act on big opportunities now, what happens when they're pushing for higher pay scales or long-term retirement benefits? Do they have to wait for another procedural window? Or will leadership adapt to the moment? And for Clark's teammates, especially Sophie Cunningham, this is one more example of the league's tendency to get in its own way. Sophie's been outspoken about player welfare and marketing, and Boston's pitch was essentially a direct answer to everything she's been calling for. She knows what it would have meant to have a team setting that kind of standard. Even rival markets might quietly be frustrated by this, because when a league pulls in a monster sale price like $325 million, that becomes a reference point for expansion fees and franchise values elsewhere. Cities like Philadelphia, Detroit, or Cleveland, all reportedly in the WNBA's expansion pipeline, could have benefited from that new benchmark. Instead, they're stuck waiting with everyone else. On top of all this is the psychological blow to fans. Boston fans aren't casual about their sports. The ones who turned out for those Sun games at TD Garden were already treating it like a permanent home team. Some even started early season ticket interest lists. That energy is now hanging in limbo. If you think they'll keep that enthusiasm warm for years without a concrete plan, you haven't met Boston sports fans. They'll move on to something else. What's ironic is that Caitlin Clark has been the league's best weapon against exactly this kind of stagnation. Her arrival injected urgency and relevance into the WNBA's narrative. That's why this decision feels like such a mismatch between what the league says it wants and what it's actually doing. Because if we're being honest, this wasn't just about moving a team. It was about declaring to the sports world that the WNBA is ready to think like a billion-dollar league, that it's ready to chase the big markets, the big investors, and the big moments. Right now, it looks like they blinked. And if they're not careful, they might find that Caitlin Clark's era, the one capable of lifting the entire league's profile, is moving faster than they are.